You're listening to Lead the Shift. Each month, I sit down with leaders who can name the moment with clarity and point to the actions that actually move systems. We talk about what's breaking, what's emerging, and what will it take to build a future-proof economy with young adults at the center. If you're ready to lead, welcome home.
I'm shifting to the future now.
My grandma would always remind me that if everyone held their own corner, leveraging their own superpowers, we could achieve anything. I've been sitting with this wisdom lately because the work in front of us, building a more inclusive, future proof economy, requires exactly that today and at such a time as this. Every system holding its corner, every leader bringing their full power to bear, not one waiting to be invited. Fannie Lou Hamer, one of our ancestors, understood that. She didn't wait for an invitation to the economy, she built one. The Freedom Farm Cooperative wasn't just about food. It was proof that if your people control the land, the labor, the resources, nobody can starve them into silence. That is the spirit of this episode of Lead the Shift, and it's the spirit of Women's History Month. Not a celebration for its own sake, but a reckoning with what women have always known that in order to build an education and economic empowerment ecosystem, we need every system pulling its weight effectively, from education to workforce development, community organizations, and beyond. These institutions that sit at the intersection of policy and capital are critical for us building power. Welcome to Lead the Shift. I'm Jeffery Wallace, and today we are going deep on what it actually takes to build power, structural, systemic, durable power for young people in our economy. My guest today is someone who has dedicated her career to exactly that. She does this from a place most people never occupy, inside an institution of higher education, building with community. Caroline Bhalla is the director of Civic Engagement at the USC Lusk Center for Real Estate. She has been an integral part to establishing and launching the Neighborhood Data for Social Change platform that does something deceptively powerful. It takes the data about our community and puts it back into the hands of our community to make change and transformation. She led the USC Center for Social Innovation. She held leadership at the New York University Forum Center for Real Estate and Urban Policy. She's taught at both USC and NYU, and she's currently completing her doctorate in educational leadership because apparently she has more free time on her hands, given all the work that she does. Caroline, welcome. And I really do appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to see you.
It's great to see you too, because USC and Leaders Up has a long history of collaborating and working together, from workforce development innovations to co-convening to really ensuring that we're locking arms and aims around how do we transform our economy into one that is sustainable, resilient, and inclusive of the next generation of talent. I want to start with something foundational because I think we sometimes rush past it in these conversations, and that's acknowledging the power and wisdom of our ancestors. Fannie Lou Hamer said, "We have to build our own power." She didn't just say it, she built a farm to prove it. She understood that economic survival and political power aren't two different fights, they are the same fight. And when I think about my grandmother's wisdom that I shared earlier, everyone holding your corner, bringing your superpowers to bear, I think she was saying something similar. We don't need everyone to do everything. We need everyone to do their thing fully in service of something larger than themselves. So I want to ask you, Caroline, when you think about that idea today, what does building power actually mean in the context of economic justice and the future for young people and women across the world? What does that mean to you?
Well, that's a great question. And when I think about building power and building up young people and young women in communities, I think about giving folks the resources they need to do for themselves, right? So you mentioned Neighborhood Data for Social Change, which is our project that puts data into the hands of the community. What I'm trying to do with that work is really provide folks the access to things that have been gate kept for a long time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
objective
Mm-hmm.
data is something that not everybody has access to, right? You have to go to this,
Mhm.
go to USC or get a master's degree in public policy to be able to access the data about your communities and neighborhoods. And so I think giving folks those resources for free really allows them to speak the truth to power, right? It gives a levels the playing field between the institution and the community. And so I think it's about giving people the tools that they need and empowering them to use them. So whether it's through neighborhood data, but also I'm thinking about the students that we serve at USC. Like I have, over the course of my career and working in higher education, I have hired, supervised, trained, and mentored, upwards of 200 students to do the work of getting them out into the world and be agents for good and for social change. So I think it's about empowering folks and giving them the tools that they need.
Yeah, so I want to stay right there, Caroline, because we know knowledge is power, right? And as you're thinking about some of the work that we do at Leaders Up and the work that you've led over the last few years, um, how can we be more effective in utilizing knowledge as power to build a base of informed young women and young people in general that can use that power to be transformative?
Well, I'm going to tell a little story, right? I think about how education changed my life, right? So, my
Hmm.
um, my dad came to this country in 1966 from India. He moved to the University of Wisconsin Madison to get his PhD in plant pathology. There, he met my mother, who was finishing her nursing degree, and she is Native American, right? So she's from a reservation in Wisconsin. So this is an unlikely pair to meet in the 60s, right? They met at a university. My dad worked at a university. He moved to California in the late 70s, where I was born. And my whole life, it was about going to college. Whatever you want to do, you're going to go to college. And so I have really devoted my career and my whole, like, really my whole path has been in higher education. So I think making higher education more accessible to underserved and under resourced communities is the key to power. I'm not saying everybody needs a 4-year degree. I'm not saying everybody needs to go to USC, but I think that universities ought to be more affordable, more accessible. I think that all types of education should be valued. I think when we think about a typical college student, you think of like some 18-year-old who like moves away and goes to college. That's actually not it at all. Many college students
Hmm.
are older with children, part time. So I want to expand our thinking around education. I want to expand access around education. That's how I think we're going to end up leveling the playing field. And I think that there's a lot of problems in higher ed. Don't get me wrong. Like I have worked in higher ed. I see the systems as, really exclusionary. Um, we could talk more about that, but I still think right now in this country, that is the key is to get our kids on a pathway so they can be educated.
It's interesting because even to this day, higher education has been referred to as the ivory tower, right? And it's hard to climb up and get through that to the top of that ivory tower. And kudos to you. We are proud of the work that you have done to matriculate not just through higher education as a student and learner, but now as a professional that is utilizing the power of community driven data in
Yeah.
order to build power across our neighborhoods that really need the transformation. One of the things that I think about as well, and I would love your perspective on this, because I think also um, an expansive definition of college should be focused on any training and development post secondary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I want to hear your thoughts on that expanded definition, but I also want to hear your perspective on lived experience
Mhm.
being a source of data that could be used to not just build power, but to transform our education into employment ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I started with education because that's how my career went. I think a focus on education is not it's like a slice of the picture. When you talk about lived experience, I think about the fact that we always ask people to look at our data and match it or supplement it with their own lived experience, right? Like
Mhm.
what you have lived through and what you know to be true is true, right? Those things are still true. And so I think we have to expand our definitions of like what counts, what matters. And so I think in that regard, lived experience is really critical. We've been thinking about how to make access to jobs more equitable, right? I think
Mhm.
everyone's thinking about that. I'm always helping my students get jobs, and I'm reading these job ads, and they're 4 years of college plus 2 years of experience plus 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 plus, and there's a big old long list, right? So that's one way to do it, right? But another way to do it is figure out how to quantify these other experiences, right? So if
Yep.
you are, a caregiver, right? If you have taken care of your siblings, if you have gotten your siblings, it just makes me, sort of emotional to think about these kids that have so much on their plate, right? Where they have to get their brothers and sisters to school in the morning. They have to make sure there's dinner on the table for their families, right? These experiences count and they should count. And so we have to reframe the conversation around what counts as experience and how we can let people in. So I sort of ended in a different place than where I started. But I had this girl come and interview with me once, and her resume had nothing on it. Like she just, it didn't show anything. And I said, well, tell me more about yourself. Tell me about like how you got here. Right. And she's like, oh, well, I worked, I was on this team in high school and I worked at like Nordstrom's and then I worked at this place. I said, why isn't that on your resume? And she said, well, it's not like the subject, we're not, it's not like subject matter expertise. And I said, what you're telling me is you juggled a job and all these other responsibilities in high school, right? And so you got here despite all of that or because of all of that. So we need
Mhm.
to add those experiences in. We need to make sure that people are counting what they're doing and really getting credit for those additional experiences.
Yeah, because those core and additional experiences outside the classroom and even outside the work site, those are the experiences where you build character, values, some of the AI proof skills that are
Yeah.
going to be necessary today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why we frame lived experience as lived wisdom. Um, how do you, and tell us more when you were talking to that young lady in conversations that you're having around career development, career exploration, and even employment with young people and your students. I know students is a broader range than young people. But walk us through how you would approach um, taking lived experience, recognizing it as lived wisdom
Mhm.
in order to advance a young person building their own power
Yeah.
within community and individually.
Yeah. That's a great question. I mean, I think you have to talk to young people about how they make decisions, right? And how they show up.
Mhm.
So I have this isn't a best practice, but I have a gut feeling about people. So when when I'm interviewing someone and I'm talking to them, I have a gut feeling about whether or not they're going to be a good fit. You can't hire people in that way. You're not supposed to, but I'm going to tell you I've never been wrong, right? And what am I basing it off of? It's
Gotta
true,
trust our intuition, right?
right? You show up on time, you ask me questions, you're listening when I talk, you follow up with an email or a letter or a note that says thank you. So, how you show up, I think, is how you translate those lived experiences into
Hmm.
a career, right? Like, um, I just think if you're working with young people and you're talking to young people and you can tell them when they're doing something right and remark, this is what I want to see next time. This is a good job. Notice there how that person interacted with you. Those things are going to take them very far, right? So I have a teenager. I'm raising a teenager in this AI internet world, like and I watch how she shows up. She says she's not on her phone all the time when she's in the room with adults. She's listening. I mean, she's a teenager, so she loves TikTok probably more than anything in the world. But she shows up on time, ready to work. She
Hmm.
loves her. She's trying to. She's on a swim team. She's always trying to do better. So those are the pieces that I think, encourage and notice. You have to meet students, teachers. You have to meet teenagers where they're at, right? So we can't expect them to walk in work ready, but I think we can notice the things that they're doing right and teach them how those translate into working skills.
Yeah, the affirmation, right,
Yeah.
of young adults, of our next generation of talent. Um, my grandma used to always tell me too, um, watch your thoughts, because your thoughts become your actions.
Yeah.
Watch your actions, because your actions become behaviors. Watch
Mhm.
your behaviors, because your behaviors become your brand,
Yeah.
right? And owning how we think about ourselves and knowing from where we come from and what we can be allows us to have not just a great brand, but have those self-affirming, self-actualizing thoughts, and having mentors and parents and caring
Mhm.
adults in general
Yeah.
around young people to affirm those actions and reinforce them and provide conditions where they can become behaviors really speaks to what you're talking about. And I think is like the power of building and owning your own brand.
Yeah.
One of the things that, as I was been preparing for these conversations, Caroline, I got real wonky, and started talking about things in ways that I do as if I was talking to, a group of academics. No shade.
No.
Um, and I had to get back to my own voice. Part of what has made me successful is listening to and applying the wisdom of my elders and
Yeah.
recognizing that there's power in that knowledge. My grandma didn't have a 4-year degree. She had a high school diploma,
Yep.
but the reality was that she took that knowledge and wisdom and her experience, was able to buy a house, was
Mhm.
able to raise, a successful set of kids, and was able to ensure that, from a generational standpoint, that the next generation did better than she had done. And there was some intention behind that.
Yeah.
And when we think about like caring adults in general who make up these systems and institutions that young people have to navigate and experience, sometimes by choice, but sometimes because this is just the law of the land. You got to
Yeah.
go to school, K through
Yeah.
12, right? You got to get a job and
Yep.
show up to work. You have to be able to understand the laws of community in order to live with safety, but also live in a lifestyle that will flourish.
Mhm.
Where do you see some gaps, or we can take a asset-based frame, some
Right.
opportunities for our educational system and particularly our workforce development system to do what you're doing at scale with your daughter, but also do what like my grandma has done, and what I've
Yeah.
recognized around wisdom and development being an intentional way of building power and affirming young
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question, right? I think where you see the opportunities are in relationship building, right? So
Mm,
here's what I'm thinking about when I say that. I'm thinking about people to people communication, and like here I'm just going to give a story and then we can figure out if it answers your question. So all the students at my work are looking for jobs right now. They're all sort of freaking out, right? Because not a good economy, AI stealing all the jobs, all of the bad things, right? I said, find a person that you can talk to about this for the rest of your life. One of your classmates, pick them and sit down and look at your job list together and share the information. Don't hoard it. Like, there's not going to be a job you're not going to get because you were free to discuss with somebody else, right? This is about relationship building. That's the one thing I
mm-hmm,
tell people. The other thing I tell people is to reach out to folks in their network and meet with them. Those are things that we as grown-ups, right? We as folks with jobs need to make time for. If a student reaches out to you and asks you to talk to them, if you would get invited to speak at an event, as a person of color, your answer has to be yes. And I know that we are all tired. I know
Hmm.
that. I am exhausted, right? But I have no choice. If you don't see me standing up there, like Native American woman standing here talking to you right now, then you will not see it as possible, right? So I think the opportunities are to be in the room, pull a chair up, sit at a table. I know you're on a commission too. I'm on a commission too. Do I have time for that?
Yep.
Probably not. But I do it, right? Because I need to be there to speak for my community. I need to learn what is happening behind closed doors. So I think the opportunities are in making ourselves available, in showing up and building relationships with the folks that are asking to be supported.
Well, it did answer my question because you're operating like this across multiple spaces.
Yeah,
You're operating with this mindset as an educator.
yeah,
You're operating with this mindset as a public servant.
mhm,
You're operating with this mindset as a committed community member.
yeah,
And, um, social capital, what we're talking about, is anchored in, you know, the assets and values of community. And I think that's one of the things also to the example that you gave and the guidance that you gave to leaders of color, to communities from historically marginalized backgrounds, including women, including our trans siblings as well, and you name it, being intentional about lifting as you climb,
yes,
right? As we are moving up, it's our responsibility to make the time in order to provide some wisdom, provide some guidance, just provide opportunity to build community. I
yeah,
often talk about the work at Leaders Up is that we're really in the business of building windows, putting up mirrors, and opening doors. Windows allow you to see past barriers to opportunity. Mirrors, to your point, as leaders of color and as a woman of color in leadership, it's important for young people to see folks that
yeah,
look like them, and say that if she did it, I can do it too. I might not be surrounded by anyone that has done what Caroline has done, but now that I know that Caroline exists, I know it's possible,
yes,
right? And to the
yes,
point around like opening up doors, like I don't know how many jobs that I can say this. I haven't interviewed for a job in a long time because mainly it was because someone
yeah,
knew my brand,
yeah,
knew how I showed up on time and got work done and allowed me to have access to an opportunity because they opened up the door and then pulled me in it.
yeah, yeah.
So I think this is something um, that we should even think about around how do we ensure that the education system, the workforce system integrates this into how they develop the
Yeah.
next generation of young leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I think about back to the gaps, and so the structures are missing, right? There's just not there's a lot of places where these structures don't exist. I'll give you an example. USC is a predominantly white institution. I think we can all agree with
Hmm.
that. Um,
Yep.
there is very little Native
That's
American
what their
representation.
neighborhood name says.
There is very little Native American representation at USC, right? I am a
Hmm.
graduate student at USC, so speaking from that voice, we are building a graduate student collective at USC so that we can advocate for our community. There is no there people don't Native American students don't go to USC because there's nobody calling them there, right? Like,
Mm.
so we built a collective that is now, it launched last month, and it will be there hopefully forever so that Native American folks,
Congratulations.
thank you so much, have a place to go when they come to USC, right? So this is what I'm saying about, obviously, I want to help the people that I can see in front of me and anybody who reaches out to me, but I also want to help create a structure that stays in place
Mm.
after I'm gone, right? Part of the trouble that we're all in right now, I think, with the dismantling of so many things that we thought were permanent, is that we built them with flimsy material, right? So I'm thinking about a
Yep.
lot of the DEI initiatives that happened at universities.
Hmm.
A lot of that stuff is gone, poof, just like that. And so it wasn't embedded in the system. So I think this is to answer, you know, some of the bigger questions, but you have to build the structure so that it's there, even if the foundation starts to, you know, even if someone tries to blow it down. So that's one of the things that we're doing to help fill a gap when we saw one.
Yeah, these spaces got to be well resourced, right? Like, if we want
Right.
community to be sustainable
Mhm.
in spaces where historically marginalized learners, students, workers have not experienced safety, equitable opportunity, and power being shared with them to build these sustainable structures, it takes resources to do that. Time, my pastor says, it takes your time, your talent, and your treasure, right?
Yeah.
And those are to your point. I think those are the fortified rather than flimsy,
Yeah.
materials that we should be integrating into our systems. And it goes beyond a standardized test.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It goes beyond, a career readiness curriculum, and even beyond like a placement in a job. One of the things you mentioned, we were both commissioners
Yep.
for LA County. One of the things that I have been uh, promoting, campaigning around for the workforce development system across LA County is that we should be an anti poverty system.
Yeah.
And I mean that from a standpoint of not turning our nose down on individuals that are climbing up the social economic ladder, but systemically we are focused on addressing the root causes of what allows for folks to be severely house burdened, folks to be making a wage under the amount necessary for them to thrive, folks not having access to the opportunities to develop skills, folks not having the social capital and community to support them, to address any other barriers that might be hindering their progression in their career or hindering them from wage attainment. And, I would love to hear from your perspective as well, given your role as a public servant and a commissioner. You know, if you had infinite resources, what would be something that you insert into the fabric and structure of our county to ensure that? And I'm going to take us back to, thinking visionarily around what opportunities are necessary for young women, particularly young women of color. Um, and I'm going to follow up with another question around advice you would give to your younger self. But just let's think big and visionary here, given what we've talked about already. What do you feel is missing and needs to be in place to ensure that young women, particularly young women of color in our county, are empowered to maximize their potential?
What a big question. I think there needs to be I'm like, let me just get my magic wand. What do we need? We need I don't know. I don't know. I'm reading this book right now about this
Hmm.
author from India, and I took a picture of this quote last night. It's one of my favorite authors. She's so deep. She said, I remember she's talking about being on a street in India, and they go down. It's the middle of the night, and there's a driver with a cart laying on the ground. And he says the driver of the cart was laying on his back, stinging to the stars, confident that his buffalo would take him home. I remember feeling jealous of him. I remember thinking that no matter how long and hard we fought in India, no woman of any religion, class, caste, or creed would ever feel safe enough to sing to the stars on a lonely highway while her buffalo took her home.
Mm,
So that's about India, right? But I also think the fundamental right to safety and security
yes.
and to
Hmm.
achieve your goals um, is something that every young woman in LA County needs, right? We need to be free to be like whatever you want to be. So, what does that mean? I think better healthcare. I think a better
Yep.
education system. I think more leave, like paid leave for mothers. I think paid childcare, excellent childcare. I think that the schools should
Yeah.
be top notch for our girls and for our children. Like for my daughters, I mean, I am fortunate to live in a place where I am a homeowner and the schools are amazing.
Yeah.
All the children in LA County should have this opportunity to have project based learning, and all of their teachers have masters and masters or higher, right? So I think it starts, at the beginning, right? I think, these
Hmm.
children that are in this county, I think there's like, yeah, I don't know, there's like so many children in this county, and they all should have fair access to resources. I think little girls should be cherished and funded and able to do whatever they want. I think they should be able to succeed and go to do whatever they want. So I think resources and opportunities, and not be limited by fear of by fear. So that's what I think.
I love that because to me, when you were talking about the radical opportunities young people and young women should have, it's really a radical commitment to human rights.
Yeah.
In the richest country, in the richest state, in one of the most wealthiest counties in the nation,
Yeah.
um, these things should not be radical at all. They
Right.
should be fundamental,
Yeah.
right? I often say, I'm tired of the social safety net because people get caught in nets.
Yeah.
Things get caught in nets, right? That's the intention of a net is to
Right.
catch something.
Right.
How do we transform these nets into actually opportunity trampolines and the things that you name
Yes.
around quality education and safety and security and being treated with dignity and respect are just fundamental things that can shift how we operate, not just as a county, but being a leader in, equitable human development, community development, and empowerment. I'm very interested in hearing your perspective around how women leaders can show up and do show up to transform conditions from their purchase leaders. You mentioned already the importance of making time to
Yeah.
invest in the next generation. What other ways and thoughts and strategies come to mind, particularly for women um, that they can deploy? You've seen deployed effectively to create that future that you
Yeah.
spoke of earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always go back to representation and being at the table,
Hmm.
right? And whatever your metaphor you want to
Hmm.
use. Um, so had the opportunity to work in a really nice building at USC for a while, right? It was really beautiful, brand new, and the doors and windows were all see-through glass. And I thought when I
Hmm.
got that office, I was like, there was no mother was on the committee to when they designed this building, because if you are having a nurse at work, it would be great to have a
Mm.
door that shuts, right? So you could have some
Yeah.
privacy, so that if you needed to breast if you're breastfeeding, then you need to have privacy. This is a small example, right, that goes into the design of a building. When people
Exactly.
when people are at the table, they advocate for something. You can't think of what I need, Jeffrey. I mean, you know a lot, right? You've been around a lot of people, but you can't speak from my experience, right? So having women at the table, having women on boards, having women in leadership, it will lead to change and more equity. It just will. It just does. I um i think the way women lead is different, fundamentally different. I think we lead through relationship building and empathy, and we think about, our heads are always in 100 places because we always have 100 things to do, right? Like before I started this call, I had to make sure that the door was unlocked so that Josie, my 10-year-old, could come in. I'm thinking, so we're always in a bunch of different places. Women have an incredible power to multitask. Women need to
Mm.
be in leadership positions more. I mean, that is just the way we just need to, across the board, there needs to be more women in leadership. There needs to be more. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be mandated 50-50. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you have an open position on your executive team, um, invite a woman to take it, right? Like make sure that you are doing your due diligence around hiring. If you look around the room and you see that it's all men, ask yourself why. What am I missing here? Who's doing the hiring? Is so those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And I would just encourage to look at the spaces that you're in and look around the room and see where is the gender distribution different and how can you personally change it.
That was powerful. And just the truth telling, right? We got to speak truth to power as it relates to composition, as it
Mhm.
relates to influence, as it relates to power,
Mhm.
as it relates to innovation. Um, I'm a believer of if you don't have a seat at the table, then make a new table.
Yeah.
If you get a seat at the table, then bring a folding chair for the next person because you can't
Right.
be the only lonely in that space as well. And that's what we're doing right now, Caroline, at Leaders Up. We're really focused on ensuring that young people have a seat at the table. And it's really a nod to some of the fundamental work we've done with you and our board member, Dr. Gary Painter, around this discipline of social innovation.
Hmm.
And you spoke to it directly with the example you gave. It was not small because what you were talking about is the value of co-design in ensuring that spaces are safe and inclusive and are designed with the intention of allowing everyone to thrive. So I would love your thoughts too around ways that we being us as partners, or us at our institutions, or leaders in general, be intentional around bringing more young people into the space as co-designers. And
Yeah.
what's the value proposition of having young people as co-designers from your perspective?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I mean, how do you bring them in? We learned through some of our work together that you don't call them on the phone, right? It's not because they're not going to pick up. Um, you got to meet them where they're at, right? And you got
Mhm.
to meet them where they're at, and you got to pay them for their time. So anytime you co-design anything, you got to bring the money with you. You got to pay the kids to be there. Their time is worth it. So I think about some of the work that we've done together in the past. We've always, whenever we could, we provide funding or stipends for the folks that we're working with. I would,
Mhm.
what's the value proposition? These kids are so smart, and I mean, think about how smart you thought you were when you were 17, right? Right? Oh my God. But you
Right. We had
were.
we call it radical imagination, right?
But we were like everything. There was no restrictions on our thinking, right? Like we didn't know what we didn't know, and so you're able to think in like a really generative, interesting way when you're young. That we have, a lot of it has been beaten out of us by the time we're in our 40s. You know too much about the world, right? And so I think the value
Exactly.
proposition is that these kids don't know what they can't do yet, and so listening to them and encouraging them, not making fun of them, is really important. Like the things that my daughter watches, they don't make any sense to me. Like she watches people play video games, and I'm like, that is so weird. But it's funny to her. She likes it, right? Like, I loved Pearl Jam when I was a kid. My mom was not a fan, right? But she let me go to the concerts and let me listen to the music. And so what I'm saying is, it's very easy to discount young people because we think we know better. But I also think that what they know is really interesting, and we're very likely to learn something from them if we give them the opportunity to speak in these spaces and encourage them to do so.
Yeah, because I think when we're given those spaces, we're placing the space with the opportunity to actually be contributive and to add value. as young people, we showed up,
Yeah.
with our thoughts, with our ideas, with our I wish, I wonder, I like these elements of things. And many times those were the ideas or those were the comments or the feedback that transform the space. I believe that young people should be thermostats and not thermometers. They should
Yeah.
be shifting the conditions in the environment, not just reacting to that. And this is something that I ask everyone on Lead the Shift, Caroline, and I want to ask you this as well. If we are really serious, genuinely not performatively serious about building an economy where opportunity is the standard, not the exception, what do you feel that leaders across sectors needs to do differently right now? Again, if we're like serious, that it doesn't matter if you're born in 90210
Mhm.
and or 90016 where I live in South LA, around the corner from USC.
Yeah.
Um, because your zip code should not define your access to opportunity, but it does now.
Yes, it
If
does.
we're serious about making opportunity a standard and not an exception, what do we need to do right now?
Yeah. I think we need to do things a little bit differently, right? I think the way that we've been operating these past however many years, it's not working. There's a lot of things that are not working and we keep doing them anyway. So I think we need to be
Mm,
serious about what is working and what is not working, and where it's not working, throw it out. I think I don't know. I love somebody said once that if a nonprofit is successful, it will go out of business, right?
yep.
I think that kind of thinking is helpful thinking. If you're still fighting the same fight that you've been fighting for the last how many years, there's something that we're not doing right. I don't have all the answers around that, but I know that having the same conversation year over year is getting very tiring. So that's one sort of depressing answer. I think another answer is we need more money. We need to fund people. I think that we have found that
Yep.
if you give families and people in poverty money, then they are no longer in poverty and they know how to make the decisions that they need to make to get themselves out. So whether it's
Hmm.
paying people more or universal basic income or
Yep.
those two policy examples, I think are ways that help. I think we should be considering I'm thinking about now like the Native American folks. I think we should be considering giving land back, right? I think there's a lot of
Yep.
things that
Yep.
we need to try to change
Mhm.
outcomes. So that's where I'm at.
And that's a fundamental shift
Yeah.
from how America has acted and has moved forward over the last 250 years since we're moving into our 250-year anniversary of this country.
Yeah.
We've got good at, in my opinion, recognizing despair,
Yes.
which, me, I love to flip a deficit into an asset and recognize our own power because I think and know to be true that one of the defining differentiators that particularly communities of color have is an ability and a connection to um, the wisdom, the guidance, and the power of our ancestors, the role modeling of our elders, and the way making and sacrifices and investment that we all do now. As I guess we're elders now in our 40s. Relatively
Mhm.
for the next generation. But the last question I have is one that I genuinely ask. Since America at times, and even in times like this, is really effective at recognizing despair, I want to ask what gives you hope?
Um, I want to give a nod to the ancestors too. When you're talking about your grandma and the wisdom that she gave you, I think about my grandma Virginia. She grew up on the reservation in Wisconsin. She was the postmistress, so she used to work at the postmistress on the reservation, and then in the afternoon she would like change her attire and then sew. She would sew for the afternoon. So I think about grandma. Um, and how she what she lived through. Um, is she never stopped paying attention. She never stopped paying attention to politics and to the world, right? And she would till she was in her 90s talk about justice and talk about the injustice, in America. Um, but what gives me hope? I think two things. I'm going to go backwards and I'm going to go forwards. My kids give me hope, and all kids give me hope. I love teenagers. I'm one of those weird people who just thinks that teenagers are hilarious. I think they're so funny and so smart, and I think they are going to I'm not saying they're going to fix what we messed up. I'm saying that they are going to approach things differently, and I think that they are going to um, stay the course. So teenagers give me hope. And then the fact that our people have been through so much worse, and we are still here. I am still here, right? So I'm a
Mm-hmm.
Native American woman. I am an executive. I'm on a commission. I'm getting my doctorate. I am still here. So despite all of the
Amen.
adversity, I am here. So we as a people have learned how to work through adversity, and we will continue to do so.
Amen. We got to honor our permanence.
That's
We
right.
here and we're not going
I'm
anywhere.
not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
Caroline, thank you. Exactly. I'm not going anywhere either,
Right.
but into the future
Yeah.
with my head held high.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Caroline, for this conversation, for your work, for being someone who holds your own corner in everything that you do, for your consistency, for your focus, for your vigilance, and your courage that's necessary at this time. I keep thinking about the advice my grandma shared with me around everyone holding their corner and bringing their superpowers to bear. And Caroline, you're a living proof of what it looks like when someone does exactly that. When someone takes data and community and experiences and transforms institutions with the dynamism of the woman's brain to multitask and get a doctorate, and be in pursuit of continued education. Um, I just say cheers to you as we celebrate Women's History Month. We know that it is her story now that is pioneering and making a way and blazing trails so that young people, particularly young women, can come behind and alongside and experience not just the same amount of opportunity as you, but also even bigger and better opportunities. And I pray that we can get to that place where every young woman is seen, heard, treated with dignity and respect, and consistently safe in every environment that they walk in. I think this is how we achieve systems change rooted in honoring the lived experience of everyone. I always believe that the ones that are most proximate to the issues are the ones that should be the source of co-designing enduring systemic change. This has been Lead to Shift. I'm Jeffery Wallace, your host. Please share this conversation, not just as content, but as a call to action. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
And it was easy as that. Thank you so much.